After this weekend's Q&A, the issue of donations for political parties has been back in the limelight as Opportunity claimed, incorrectly, that they were the only party with plans to deal with donations, which, they've been the recipient and therefore benefactor of. So we're called hypocritical by David Seymour, one of the biggest beneficiaries of political donations so far this election. The biggest issue with donations for an election campaign is that the cost isn't always the number of dollars given. All three coalition parties, for example, received donations in 2023 from organisations that have gone on to apply for fast-track approvals, which raised concerns about conflicts of interest. The Mowbrays keep donating to this year's election campaigns for the coalition, and suddenly toy safety regulations are changed to meet their needs. Property developers donated big time to the coalition, and in the first month in power, interest deductibility was restored, removing almost $3 billion from government books along the way. And disproportionate punishments were put in place for people who ended up as whistleblowers against the fishery industry after years of donating to New Zealand First, especially Shane Jones's campaign, who was the MP who specifically signed off on those disproportionate punishments. But don't get me wrong, that money can also buy a shitload of misleading billboards, ads aimed to target Manosphere fanboys, and AI slop. So absolutely there should be questions about donations, expectations, and limiting influence from donations on political decision making. And this is where I've absolutely got to give credit to Radio New Zealand. They've been tracking donations and this week have highlighted more on the influences those donations come with by looking at the people and organisations behind the largest donors, which shows the rest of us who is willing to pay millions to keep things the way they are, which, if you aren't wealthy, sorted and entitled to your entitlements, you might have noticed aren't great. So, who's been donating? Well, number one this year with $600,000 to ACT and National is Graham Hart's Rank Group, a privately held investment company that includes Carter Holt Harvey and Carter's. And Hart himself was the first New Zealander to have successfully hoarded $10 billion. The big number two floating around is Nicholas Mowbray, the Trump supporting, then Trump disliking because of the Trump tariffs Trump promised on Chinese-made goods impacted his Trump-loving billionaire fan toy maker Nick directly, who has donated $450,000 to ACT and National while using Twitter to decry the left as woke and socialist, and Elon, Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump are net positives for humanity apparently. Number three is GMP Environmental, a subsidiary of Greymouth Petroleum, which is based in Taranaki, not Greymouth. GMP works specifically with the oil, mining, industrial, chemical, and engineering fields, so those extractive industries that are doing really well under the coalition. Number four is Philip Mills. He's the son of the founder of Les Mills, who gave $250,000 to the Greens, Labour, and Opportunity, based specifically on climate change issues. Number five is the estate of former union official and mountaineer Murray Jones, who left $219,000 to Labour in a will settlement. The former head of Zespri gave ACT National $200,000. Construction and civil engineering businessman Michael Grant Sullivan gave $200,000 to ACT National. Two fields which have seen the biggest contraction of staff as they've shed employees due to the downturn in the industries driven by government decisions which have impacted those industries. But hey, he still gave them $200,000 each. And Sir Peter Vela gave $200,000 to ACT and New Zealand First. You might remember Vela. He was the racing insider who wrote a report that he claimed was asked for by Winston, but Winston denied, which claimed that the racing industry should get tax breaks. When it comes to donations, National receive more from organisations than individuals, and the other parties have all received the majority of their donations from individuals, not organisations. And the disparity between donations is clear, with over $5 million raised so far, and 85% of it at least going to coalition parties to retain the status quo, which, in case you missed it, includes record inflation, unemployment, homelessness, beneficiary needs, migration away from the country, poverty, and business liquidations. But the power of that money is massive, because while there's a spending regulation period that started on August 7, this gives the coalition parties the resources to flood the zone with misleading billboards, ads, and native advertising and media sites, radio, and more. Those ads targeted at men, that was pre-regulated spend. Those idiotic billboards with false claims, the Advertising Standards Authority says I have to say they're opinions, not false claims, all pre-election spending. Flyers you've been getting, signs for all those public meetings on issues that focus groups tell National that you say are important. The big war chest allows them to mount a ground attack before the whistle officially starts for the race to the finish line. So, how can we counter this? Well, we can make sure that those millions donated by some of the richest and some of the shittiest people in the country to more often than not keep your neck firmly under a boot is, well, kind of downplayed. And you can do that with a vote. But this year, that also involves making sure that your details are up to date. We're seeing people now being moved to the dormant role because they haven't needed to update in years, and the system automatically does that for them. So it is best to check your details just in case. And counter the bullshit with your voice. Share content and resources that push back on the misleading narratives. Go to events and call them out when they bullshit to crowds and ask for evidence of their claims. Talk to your friends and whānau about what's on the line and how you feel and how these decisions impact you. And remember, telling a millionaire or billionaire to shove it and showing that they don't get to dictate every element of how you live, that's a good feeling. And you can do that this year with 2 ticks. It's that simple. Hello there, Kia ora podcast listeners. I'm going to keep this one really quick because I have to duck off and have a shower real soon so I can head off to this thing tonight with Marilyn Waring. I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, it's Marilyn Waring. If you haven't heard the story about what Marilyn did back in 84, then you really should check it out because she was the one that told, what's-his-face, Piggy Muldoon, that she was going to vote with Labour, cross the floor from National, vote with Labour to make New Zealand nuclear free. And he was like, no. He got drunk and he called a snap election that night because he didn't want to have one of his MPs cross the floor. And it's just like this legendary moment of New Zealand politics. So being able to go and have just any kind of event in the presence of Marilyn Waring is just like, for a political tragic like me, it is absolutely stunning. So like I said, I'm going to keep it long. And for those of you that were listening to the last podcast, maybe the one before this actually, because the last one is going to be Campaign Kōrero by the time this comes out. The one before this, the Monday podcast, Tuesday podcast. Oh God, it shows how time is all screwed up in my head. You'll know that this is what I was talking about anyway as a potential future episode because I already scripted it up. And yeah, it was looking at what was happening in terms of funding. And I got to say, Radio New Zealand has moments where they are really, really onto it. This is one of them. Their campaign funding tracking that they've been doing for the last couple of months has been really, really solid because it's not just like the listing that you get on the election website, on the Electoral Commission website, which is there by law and it tells you how much is donated and by whom. This actually goes in and gives you more context. So you can see names on paper, for example. One of the ones that keeps popping up, I noticed, was I think it's Williams Corporation, which is owned by Matthew Horncastle down in Christchurch. And Matthew is a horrible little shithead who thinks he's clever, but he has lots of money and doesn't understand what nepotism is. And that is a dangerously stupid combo. And he has donated a ton of money to the National Party, and I think some to the ACT Party as well. He was the one who paid to have dinner with Christopher Luxon, I think it was. And knowing that, like if you just saw Williams Corporation on paper, you don't know what it is, it's just like, cool, that's another company. But when you know that the person who is giving that money, the person behind that money, is somebody who is a nepotistic, suck-up little baby, it gives a different set of context. And it's very much the same with the top donors as well. The people who have been donating money include somebody who hoarded $10 billion worth of, $10 million, I don't know, It's a number that's inconceivable in my head. It's just one of the richest people in the country. I went to an event. I was working an event last year, I think it was, next to Graham Hart's mansion. And we actually had to stop the event because he was flying in on a helicopter. And it's just like, it's screwed up. It is so screwed up. So yeah, I'm really impressed with this element of reporting from RNZ. I'd really like them to stop, platforming uncritically ACT Party stuff and maybe start asking questions like, is it really a good idea for the ACT Party? The ACT Party, which had a pedophile president, to dictate who a good to work with child person is and give them a card like that? That is something that media should be pushing back on. But they just don't. But the reporting around the funding is really good. I've been really impressed with Farah's reporting on this one. So yeah, that's what this episode is about. And as we get closer to the election, there's going to be more money. One of the things that I didn't put in here, which I did notice though, is that the amount of donations for this campaign have actually been lower than the amount of donations last time. So maybe the cost of living has impacted the millionaires and billionaires as well. Oh dear. But it is something that I think if you really have a party that you want to see in there, if you're really passionate about a specific party, get out there and help them. Support them in whatever way you can. Platform them, door knock for them, tell your friends and family about them. Like, just get out there and spread the word. Because we know that there are people who aren't going to be getting all this information, who aren't going to be up to date on the web, on the electoral roll, so they're not going to be able to vote. We know that there's all these roadblocks in place and all of this disinformation out there. So get out there and help the parties that you want to see in Parliament, because one of the things I have noticed actually with all of the stuff I do, the amount of people who are really concerned that if we don't see a change of government this year, we're going to see irreparable harm for generations in this country is really high. I've never seen it like that before. So, yeah, we can fix that. 2 ticks for anything that's not the coalition is a good place to start. But we'll see. We'll go from there. All right, in the meantime, guys, I'm going to leave you to it. I need to go and get ready for this meeting tonight. Ka kite anō, live long, prosper, be one with the force. I will catch you guys all next time.